Alright, so here we are. I think this will be probably the last video I'll show you in this mini series on the basics of SketchUp. And what I'm going to show you in this video is I'm going to show you how to create layers. I'm going to show you how to label different parts and how to dimension them so that we know the size. And I will show you how to actually color some of your objects different colors so that you can differentiate between them easily. So here we go. The first thing I'm talking about is the layers palette, and so if this doesn't show up on your screen, you can always go over here to Window and go to Layers and it will show up. Additionally, there are some tools that you may not have up here, and if you right click on this you can customize your toolbar and you can see all the different tools that SketchUp has to offer right in here, and the way you add them is you're going to make a component. You could drag that and drop it right up here to the top, and then it would be in your toolbar and a little bit easier to access. So you can modify that how you wish and make it to make it the best for your workflow process. So layers palette's up, and I'm going to, you notice you always have a layer 0, and I'm going to add some additional layers. Okay, you can name these layers whatever you want. I'm going to label one dims for dimensions because we're going to talk about dimensions, and then I'm going to label one labels because we're going to label some things, but I want to be able to turn those layers on and off just like you would in Photoshop or Illustrator. So right now everything was drawn on layer 0, which is totally fine. I'm going to add one more called, I know these don't look like solar panels, but we're going to call them solar panels. And we made all these objects on layer 0, which is the layer you want to draw everything on. And then we're going to create these groups, and the group is what you will move to an individual layer. So right now this object is on layer 0, and we know that because this little dot is highlighted and it is visible. The way you move that is you're going to right click on it and click Entity Info, and it's going to pop this guy up and it's going to tell me it's on layer 0. I want to move it, and I want to move it to the solar panels layer. So now if you look at the entity info for this particular object, it says group 1 in model. It's on the solar panel layer, and I'm going to name this solar panels. Okay, return. And if I go over here to visible, it's going to turn it on and off, which is going to really make your life easier if you will keep your model organized. Alright, everything needs to be turned into a group before we start assembling anything. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude a couple of these other objects so that we have some things to put together. I'm going to extrude this down 12 feet. Okay, and we made a group out of this, which I think I said was like the dining hall or something. Double click it, extrude it up, I don't know, 10 feet, so it's a 10 by 10 by 10 cube. Okay, and I could come in here and create dining room, or dining, what would you call that, the dining pod, okay, for a 3D model. Alright, and we're just going to call these our connections, hallways, or tubes. Let's call them tubes. Alright, and I'm going to click on both of these and look at my entity info and put these on the tubes layer. I'm going to click on this one and entity info on this one and put it in the dining pod. So real quick, if I start turning these things off and on, you can see that parts begin to disappear and reappear. Alright, I'm going to delete these because we don't need them. You'll notice I left some lines there on accident, so delete those. Okay, and let's assemble these parts. And so one of the trickiest things about how to put things together is how to align them or how to rotate them so that they fit the way you want. And so I'm just going to quickly draw some lines on here for reference that I will erase later. They're not inside the group. They are just sitting on top of the group. And so I want to rotate this object, and we haven't talked about rotation at all yet. So just like any other tool, your rotation, you can rotate in the red axis, the green axis, or the blue axis. And for this one, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees in the blue axis. So I move my axes around until it aligns, and I'm going to click on that corner. I'm going to come down here, I'm going to click one more time on this corner, and then you'll notice that I can actually rotate. I'm not holding anything on my mouse, I'm just moving it. I want to rotate it 90 degrees. So I move it in the general direction that I want it to rotate, and I click 90 and I hit enter, and it will rotate it in that direction. Just as easily I could have come over here and clicked on this green axis, click once, click twice, and I can rotate it up. And I could rotate it up 90 degrees. Okay, and rotate it in my blue axis again, and rotate it this way. I can rotate it any direction that I want to in any angle increment that I need to. So I'm going to move this now. I'm going to draw me a line across the back of this like this. And I'm going to draw a line. Let's see. I'm going to orbit around here, and I'm going to draw a line on here. This is the trickiest part about putting your pieces together, is getting them aligned correctly. So I'm drawing these lines because they're going to help me center the object on the shape. So typically all of your space station stuff, they're very centered. They're very when you look at a space station, if there's a circle, it's usually right in the middle of a square. So we're trying to align them. So I'm going to click on the move tool, and I'm going to move down this line until it says midpoint. And the midpoint, I think, is going to be right there. See, it's going to say midpoint. So I'm going to wheel back on my mouse, and I'm going to hit the orbit tool, and I'm going to orbit around to right there, and I'm going to hit the escape key, and I'm going to get it close. Okay, alright, and then I'm going to orbit around and try and get to the point where I can see both of these faces, which might be impossible. So let's see, I'm going to move this again, move from the midpoint of that line to, and then I'm going to zoom in here until I find the midpoint of that line, midpoint. So midpoint to midpoint, now they're centered. Alright, now I don't need these lines I drew anymore, so I'm just going to click one of them and hit delete. Or I could just as easily get the erase tool. You'll be careful with that erase tool, make sure you don't actually erase anything that's important. And I'm going to erase those lines out of there. And this object is now centered on my dining room. My solar panels are centered on my dining room. That's how I'm going to work on assembling all of my different parts to this, is by doing that. Now you'll notice my solar panels are hanging off my dining room, so maybe I want to come in here and extrude these faces out an extra, I don't know, 3 feet, okay, on that side. And I'm going to come over here and do the same on this side and hit extrude or push pull, and I'm going to push pull or extrude it 3 feet this way. And now my solar panels don't extend beyond my dining room. And I'm going to move this cylinder. Alright, so let's move the tube, okay, that tube, and I'm going to move it from here, and I just want to get it close at the moment. Right there. And I'm going to come up here. This is one of the really tricky ones. Alright, the easier way to do this probably is to get a circle, and I think we made the diameter of this thing 2 feet. Okay, and I'm going to draw that circle on the top of here, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to move this from that edge, and I'm going to try and align it by simply clicking right there and aligning those two shapes. Okay, and now to get rid of all that junk that's underneath there, I'm just going to make a window from the left to the right, and it's going to highlight all that stuff. If I go from the right to the left, it actually selects the objects. I'm just going to go from the left to the right, and hit delete, and it's going to get rid of those lines. And I can orbit those things around, and I begin to assemble my space station. So I can turn my tubes off, I can turn my solar panels off, I can turn my dining pod off, and they're all there. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is how to, actually not the last thing, I've got two more things. I'm going to show you the paint bucket. Okay, with the paint bucket you can pick a color and you can color any of these things different colors so that you can differentiate between parts. Okay, typically solar panels are kind of a dark black color, and I've started to color these shapes. All right, that's pretty simple. There's also textures in here. If you want it to have a metal texture, you can put a metal texture grid on it, right? And you can edit those textures. We'll talk about that in another video, or you're welcome to go to YouTube and find another video on that. I'm not going to explain that today. And the last thing you're going to do is I'm going to show you how to put dimensions on your layers. So you're going to make dims your active drawing layer, and first I'm going to label this. So I'm just going to click anywhere, pull it out, and I'm going to call this dining hall. Dining pod, I think, is more appropriate. Okay, that's my dining pod. All right, and make another label for this one. This is my connection tube. Connection module, something, right? And then these are my solar panels. All right, now notice it automatically called this solar panel because I labeled this group and I made this group and I called it solar panel, so it automatically made the label for me, which is pretty nice. I didn't label this pod or this pod whenever I made the group. I didn't label the group type. All right, last thing on the dimensions layer. Ooh, I did those on the wrong layer. I made a labels layer, so let's select all those. If you hold shift, you can select more than one thing. So I selected all those on entity info layer. Let's move those to the labels layer. And the last thing we're going to do here is the dimensions. And so if you go to tools, let's see, where are they? It's under, you know what? It's over here. Customize toolbar. There's my dimension tool. I'm going to drag it up, close that. And I'm going to draw some dimensions on here so that everyone will know how big my pods are. So I just simply click on the corners. Okay, I can click different things that I know I'm going to have to build and make, and I can show the sizes of those objects. Okay, and you could zoom in here and we could actually dimension all the different sides and angles and stuff on here that you might want to. For me, just showing you how it works, I think that's going to be enough. The cool thing about this is as you rotate around, those numbers always face you, so it's nice when you're actually building it to have this out, and you can rotate parts around and see what those dimensions are. So I think that's all I need to show you for this tutorial. There's some other things that we'll talk about when we decide to render this out and how to get it out so that you can make a poster or a graphic out of it. You can also animate views, so you could show, like, here's my, go up here to your camera and you can go to standard views. Here's my top view of this object, and you could animate it so that it rotated down like this and showed you the front view, right? Or it rotated this way and showed you the side view, and you can export that animation out as a video that you could show at your EOL, but we will get there later. We've covered everything I think you need to know in order to build a basic object, and thanks for watching.